If you've achieved nothing by 25, you may have avoided the most destructive illusion of youth. That sentence probably hit you in a strange way, not fully comforting, not fully threatening either, just unsettling, because a part of you wants to reject it, and another part of you feels like it might be true. Be honest. You've had moments where you looked at your life and thought, I should be further than this. I'm behind. I wasted time. But what if the problem was never about being behind? What if the thing you think you missed was actually the thing that would have trapped you? You've been told this your whole life, that your 20s are supposed to be your building years, that by 25, you should have direction, momentum, something to show, a path that makes sense. So you start measuring yourself against people your age, against timelines, against invisible expectations you never agreed to, but somehow still follow. You see someone succeeding early, and something inside you tightens. Not always jealousy. Sometimes it's quieter than that. It's that thought. They figured it out. Why haven't I? And then you try to fix it. You rush decisions. You force clarity. You chase something, not because you truly want it, but because it feels like progress, because doing something feels safer than doing nothing. But here's what you don't realize in that moment. You're not chasing purpose. You're escaping discomfort. Think about this. It's late. You're alone, scrolling, watching other people your age, living lives that look certain. They have routines, careers, direction, at least from the outside, and you feel this quiet pressure. Not loud, not dramatic, just this low, constant tension in your chest. You open a note or your thoughts and you ask yourself, what am I doing with my life? You try to answer it, but your mind doesn't give you clarity. It gives you noise, options, doubts, half ideas that don't fully land. I could try this, but what if it doesn't work? What if I'm wasting more time? And then you feel stuck, not because you're incapable, but because every direction feels uncertain. So you close it. You distract yourself. You tell yourself, I'll figure it out later. But later keeps moving. Here's what's actually happening. And this is the part most people don't see. You're not lost because you lack direction. You're stuck because you were never forced to confront uncertainty properly. There's something in psychology called premature identity formation. It's when you lock into a version of yourself too early just to feel stable. I'm this kind of person. This is my path. This is what I'm meant to do. It feels good because it removes doubt. It gives you a sense of control, a sense of certainty, but it's fragile because it's not built on exploration. It's built on avoiding discomfort. So when reality challenges that identity, you don't adapt. You defend it. You stay in things that don't fit anymore. You ignore signs. You keep going, not because it's right, but because changing feels like failure. That's the illusion. The illusion that you're supposed to figure it out early, when in reality, figuring it out too early is what traps most people. Your brain is wired to seek certainty, not truth. Certainty. Studies in developmental psychology show that people who explore multiple identities, careers, beliefs, roles, before committing, tend to have stronger long-term stability. Not weaker, but because their foundation was never flexible, because they've tested themselves. They've seen what doesn't fit. They've experienced doubt without collapsing under it. But people who commit too early often build their identity on limited experience. So when life inevitably shifts, they struggle, not because they're weak. There's also something called identity foreclosure. It's when you adopt a path without truly questioning it, often influenced by expectations, fear, urgency, comparison. It looks like success from the outside, but internally it creates pressure because you're constantly trying to prove that choice was right. And that pressure, it doesn't go away. It just gets quieter. And this isn't just about careers. You do this in other areas too, in relationships, because you already invested time, because leaving feels like starting over, because you told yourself, this is it, even when something feels off, even when you've outgrown it. At work, you stick to a path, not because it fulfills you, but because it's what you chose. Because changing feels like admitting you were wrong. In your identity, you hold on to labels. I'm this kind of person. I don't do that. That's not me. Even when something inside you is shifting, you're not protecting the path. You're protecting the version of yourself that chose it. And that's where people get stuck. Not at 25, not at 30, but for years, because they confuse consistency with alignment. So maybe achieving nothing by 25 isn't the failure you think it is. Maybe it means you didn't rush into something just to feel certain. You didn't lock yourself into an identity you weren't ready to carry. You stayed in the uncomfortable space where things aren't clear, where you don't have all the answers, where you can't explain your path in one sentence. And that space, it feels like falling behind. But it's actually where real direction is built. Because clarity doesn't come from guessing early. It comes from seeing more, experiencing more, questioning more. It comes from letting things break, letting ideas fail, letting versions of yourself dissolve, not rushing to replace them, but actually sitting in that gap. Most people avoid that. They fill it too quickly with goals that look good, with paths that feel safe, with identities that sound impressive. But underneath, they're still unsure. They've just learned how to hide it. So if you're here, feeling like you haven't achieved enough, like you're behind, like you should have figured things out by now, look closer. You weren't doing nothing. You were avoiding a trap. The trap of becoming someone too early. The trap of building a life that looks right but feels wrong. You were in the part most people skip. The part where nothing is clear, nothing is guaranteed, nothing is solid, yet. And yes, it feels uncomfortable. It feels slow. It feels like you're not moving. But something is happening, quietly. You're learning how to think for yourself, not just follow, not just react. You're learning what doesn't fit. And that matters more than you realize. Because once you see clearly, you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to force direction. You move differently, more intentional, more aligned. Not because you rushed, but because you waited long enough to understand. And if this felt a little too real, if something here made you pause, even just for a second, then you're starting to notice it. The patterns, the pressure, the illusion you were never meant to follow. And once you see that, you don't just look at your life differently. You move differently, without rushing to become something you're not ready to be.